welcome back to 13C. On my own here today, Gunrunner 219 wasn't able to join us for this one, but our larger rifle can thoughts video was going to be dropping right about now. We're going to push that off another week. This has been, you've heard of the summer of love? Well, this has been the summer of rain. Hopefully the rain's going to hold out here so we can get at least this portion filmed right now. So basically, what we've got for this one is suppressor alignment. Preventing baffle strikes, other considerations, silencer walk-off, and also it happened to me just recently here. So the thousands and tens of thousands of rounds we put down range suppressed, finally had it happen to me. So we're going to get into what happened here and why it happened, how it was user error, and how we can hopefully prevent that. So let's talk big picture here first. Concentricity, center line alignment, things like that, offset, angles, how that relates to barrel threading, the bore, all the stuff. So basically, if you're buying a quality can from a quality manufacturer, a quality barrel from a quality manufacturer, you're probably not going to have any trouble. When you start crossing all those things, you can have trouble in relation to baffle strikes. In addition to that, there is walk-off. So walk-off is really the easiest to explain, and we'll do that right out of the gate, and that's what happened here. This is a direct thread can. This is my Verse 30. Shot a ton through this, and it walked off the end of my Galil Ace Gen 2 pistol while I was shooting it. So the video that dropped right before this, at the very end of the thing, I decided to do a few more shots because I realized I hadn't gotten enough really shooting action shots on camera when I was talking about that Shockwave Blade Stealth Brace that we did. So I did some shooting and I demonstrated shooting it one-handed. Well, after a couple mag dumps and whatever, I never checked to make sure the can was re-cinched on. So as I was full extension shooting it, of course 7.62 by 3.9, the larger rifle out, full extension, you're going to get more barrel movement and rise than if, let's say, it's braced up against your shoulder. And this walked off enough that there was just that little bit of wobble, and what it caused was an end cap strike. So there was no baffle strike in this, which is very good news. Shined a light down in there, looked down in there really well. It is definitely the end cap, and you can see where it just caught the end of the end cap, so that very inner portion of the end cap is actually pretty much unscathed. And it must have been, I guess, probably the last round that I fired through this that did it. Maybe 2 rounds hit, I think one right there and one right there on the end cap. The baffle stacks in here are intact. I looked down pretty well from both sides, just bore light look in there. Looks good otherwise, so it's going to be a simple end cap replacement when I get around to it. Bowers has an excellent warranty anyway. I'm sure I could just send this thing in and they'd warranty it, even though it was a user error. Had nothing to do with either the rifle or the Bowers can. It simply walked off the end. Now, why does that happen? So direct thread, when the threads engage, this one, for example, is 5/8 by 24. So what that means is the outer diameter is 5/8 of an inch, and it's 24 threads per inch. There's half by 28, which would be half-inch threads. 28 would be 28 threads per inch, etc. Basically, when you're shooting, the gun's moving, parts are moving, and it can literally walk off the end as it unthreads. Now, metric threads, the left-hand ones, are actually better at preventing walk-off than standard threading, US threading, if you will. Probably the first time in the history of forever where something metric might actually be better. No, not even close. Metric never put anybody on the moon. I don't even know what I'm saying right there. So the point is here, what can you do to mitigate that? Number one, if you've got a good suppressor cover like this Griptastic cover here, or SupCov, it'll allow you to actually grab your silencer with your bare hand and give it a twist to make sure it's on tight. Generally, this happens slightly more with pistols than with rifles, because again, you've got a lot more movement there. Happens with rifles too, as it did with this. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. Kind of bummed out about it. At the same time, it's a good teaching moment, right? And hopefully I'll never let that happen again. That's just getting lazy. That's not checking your can after every few mags. Other things you can do for direct thread to try and help with that, you could theoretically put just a touch of Teflon tape on there, which would help to kind of help it from backing off, and keep it on there. If you're using Teflon tape, obviously don't put a ton on there. Don't use it where it's gonna bind anything up. Don't let it fall over the crown of the thing. You know, don't let it prevent you from shouldering appropriately, things like that. Speaking of which, never use a crush washer with a silencer. Some people who do it and get away with it. Pretty much any silencer book you're going to look into says don't use, or manual will say don't use a crush washer. Don't use one. Crush washers work by basically putting some torque as you crush it down and flatten it. It puts some torque on the threads, and there's an interface there. There's a little bit of slop in between those threads, just because for manufacturing purposes they're all not identical, and there's just a little bit of give and take there, you know, tens of thousands of inches, but it can impart that ever so slightly. So while a standard muzzle device, for example, that you may use a crush washer on, even if it sets you off a couple of degrees on a standard length muzzle device, it's not going to matter. And normally muzzle devices are overboard anyway. When you're talking about adding on a significant amount of length, a couple of degrees as it goes out, as each inch progresses, a couple of degrees translates into bigger and bigger issues. So keep that in mind. That's why you don't want to use a crush washer. If you do need anything, when we're talking about QD, let's get into QD. A lot of good things about QD, a lot of reasons why I like QD, and a lot of reasons why it helps prevent things like walk-off. So if, a lot of QD interfaces have some kind of locking collar, different systems to keep them on there. Some of them have different tapers, before threads, after threads, where we won't get into that discussion right now, and which one's better, or how some of those can sometimes lock up and then make it even harder to get your silencer off when you want to take it off. The point is, what I want to talk about here is the muzzle device interface. So whether you're using a flash hider, muzzle brake, whatever, for your QD device for silencer, do not use a crush washer on it unless you're really brave, or the manual actually says to, and they supply you with their own crush washer, which probably is almost, I don't think, going to happen. There's Shim Kits for that. Use the Shim Kits to time your muzzle brake, or, you know, and timing isn't necessarily always needed with a flash hider, depending on how the flash hider is designed. If it's a three-prong design, then obviously you want your prongs orientated in the proper direction. Use that Shim Kit though. So, all right, now I'm completely lost on where we should be here. Alignment. All right, so when you're talking about the greater scheme of alignment and knowing before you when you put a silencer on a new weapon for the first time, you want to check and make sure the alignment is there. So there's a couple different ways to do that. The easiest way to do that, and the one that's not going to cost you any money, if you've got an AR or an AK or whatever, take your upper off your AR, pull out the bolt carrier, put your can on there, shine a light down there, and look through it and visually look through it. That can be your first indication that things could be wrong. Now, obviously, your eye is not a precision gauge for that, but it will at least give you that initial go, no-go field gauge type thing. Same thing with an AK, and you've got to be really careful about AKs. Pull your top cover off, pull out the bolt carrier, look through there and see. So when it comes to AKs, whew, man, there are a ton of different manufacturers, different things, surplus, non-surplus, barrels here, barrels there, how are they threaded. Man, if you're putting a silencer on an AK, the only way I would do it is to make sure you're using an alignment gauge. There's several different companies that make alignment gauges. Geisley makes probably the most expensive one, but it's probably the most precise instrument out there for doing this. There's a whole process that they go through making their Geisley the suppressor alignment gauge, I believe is the name, something like that. Maybe we can throw a link down below to it or something. The point there is you can put your rod down your barrel. They make 5.56, they make 30 cal. I don't know, they make a couple of 9mm. I'm not sure all the ones they make exactly, but they make these and they will help you make sure that you're lined up. So basically what you're looking for is for the center of that, for the rod to be centered perfectly inside the aperture of your, or exit of your can as it goes all the way through there. That's kind of where you are there. So there's tools for this and ways to do it so that you can prevent it. These are expensive items. You don't want to destroy them, and you don't want to have any kind of catastrophic accident where you wind up blowing your can and possibly injuring somebody. These are safe, good, great devices, but you have to exercise some due diligence and not get complacent. That's how this happened on the end for me. Walked off, wasn't paying attention, wasn't tightening it every mag or two, just to, not necessarily tightening it, but checking to make sure it was still tight, and if it's not, then obviously tighten it. So there we go. That's just getting lulled into complacency and not doing my part. O-rings. Some folks will use O-rings. Now there are certain handguns, for example, out of Europe that enjoy the use of an O-ring with their silencer. If it's in the manual and it's from the factory and they tell you you can use it, well, there you go. If you're trying to add your own O-ring, I would probably say no. Again, because of some of those differences in thread pitches and stuff like that, and the manufacturing tolerances and differences across spans of manufacturers, it's probably not a good idea to use an O-ring if it's not a dedicated O-ring from the thing. Talking about baffle strikes, sometimes they're not catastrophic, they're not as easily noticed. So how can you tell if you're having a baffle strike if there's no real visual indication just looking at, you know, the end point of your silencer? So part of that would be if you're shooting and you put your silencer on and you notice a wild point of impact shift. Now, throwing a silencer on the end of a firearm is going to change the point of impact some. So not like a ton. In most of our testing, we're throwing off point of impact by about 1 inch at 100 yards for most of our rifle cans. Some of them are a little better, a little worse than others, but you're not talking about a massive amount. It's something you want to do and test it so that you know how it affects your shooting, because that 1 inch at 100 yards is going to extrapolate out every 100 yards you go. So that's the accuracy portion. I think we talked about that before. If we didn't, then we're going to cover that in a future video. But in any event, for the purposes of this video, if you're putting a silencer on the end of your weapon and you're seeing your groups expand, that's bad. A silencer should never cause your groups to expand. It may shift the point of impact a little bit, but your groups should never expand simply because you put a silencer on the end of it. If you did, there's something going on inside that can that's off. So more than likely is related to some sort of slight contact with the baffles. Same thing if you're getting massive deviation. You know, you throw your silencer on the end of it and now all of a sudden your groups have shifted, you know, 5 inches in 100 yards. Not good. Again, there's something going on inside there. So what can happen is the alignment can be off ever so slightly that the bullets are just barely grazing a baffle. So just barely making contact. And what you'll see inside there, if it's a lead bullet, you'll kind of see that little lead streak. It's copper jacketed, you'll usually see a little copper mark down the inside of your baffle. Usually you could probably tell with a light if you shine it down in there. For the most part, it's going to be easier to take apart. So if you're servicing your can, that's the time when you're in there and cleaning it to look and see if anything's off. So that's where you are there. Those are some indications that outside visually, because this outer diameter here on your end cap is usually just ever so slightly bigger than some of those baffle diameter, the inner baffle diameters. So you may not get a visual indication on your end cap in that regard. While you're in there, if you're taking it apart, check your baffle port alignments. You have those little tiny ports on your baffles. Make sure they're lined up per manufacturer instructions. If they're all supposed to be lined off, if they're supposed to be offset a slight amount each way around as you go down the baffle stack, stuff like that. Modern, new versus old. If you're getting someone to thread your barrel for a silencer, make sure you are using a good manufacturer, gunsmith, someone who knows what they are doing, and then check, double, and triple check after it's threaded to make sure that you've got an alignment, not just with this, with whatever silencer you're using, but across your spectrum of silencers you're going to put on there, which is another topic. Make sure all your silencers, you know, if it's the first time you're putting that silencer on a different weapon, vice versa, make sure there's an alignment there. Just don't, I mean, you can, I've done it before, but if you just go throwing cans onto guns, you always run that risk without checking of there being an issue there. When it comes to muzzle devices, and particularly like AKs, there's some thread adapters for AKs that you can put onto an AK that will allow you to thread, for example, 5/8 by 24 inch. Some of them are made by good companies and they're good devices. Make sure though, when you're putting them on there, an AK has that little post that sticks out the front, so you thread it on and that post sticks out the front to prevent it from walking off or backing off whatever muzzle device you put on there. You want to screw that thing down tight, hold that pin in all the way it'll go, so you don't have that wobble on the front that sometimes you do with some of your other muzzle devices that you put on there. A little bit, you know, a little bit of wobble or movement in a 1 or 2 inch muzzle device is way different than having 8, 9 inches sticking off the front of your rifle, and that little bit of movement will cause an end cap strike, at least, possibly a baffle strike. So again, it's nothing to fear if you know what you're looking for, you know what you're doing, and you stay diligent. In my case, this was 100% on me and 100% my fault. It just is what it is. That was me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new to silencers and you're looking to check them out, we're going to have a playlist down below that's going to put all this kind of information drop in one place for you to look at and go through video by video. Silencershop.com, if you're getting into stuff new, they have a Sid Kiosk, which will allow you to do all your fingerprints and stuff like that at the system. They upload it electronically. You go to whatever local dealer has one, put your information in, uploads it up to their site. You can take a picture from your phone. Works extremely well so that all that stuff is electronic, makes the process of filing your Form 4 so much easier. Works really well, and if you're ordering directly from Silencer Shop, there's no transfer fees, anything like that, going from Silencer Shop to Silencer Shop dealer, so you save on transfer, and no shipping fees either going from them to one of their dealers. So if you don't have one of the dealers close by that has a kiosk, you only have to visit that kiosk once pretty much in your entire life, unless your fingerprints change, which that isn't going to happen, I guess, unless some horrible accident happens, which would be really sad. But you only have to visit it once. So if you have a dealer, you know, just right down the road from you that doesn't have a kiosk, but they're a Silencer Shop affiliate or whatever it's called, you can drive that extra hour to a Silencer Shop dealer who has a kiosk, get your information uploaded there, and then come back home and use your regular dealer, because you only have to visit that kiosk once, and you're saving yourself the extra drive going back and forth. You can order from the comfort of your own home, have it delivered to your dealer. Don't even have to show up there until the stamp comes in and it's picked up and it's ready to go, which is really nice. Save you a trip, especially if you live kind of in the middle of nowhere and it's a long way to get to your closest NFA licensed dealer. So hopefully that helps. Facebook.com/gun reviews. I don't even know why I'm giving you that, because I really am disappointed with those people right now. But we're there. Check it out if you want. Our Instagram is back up, 13C Media. We got nixed on that. We got zucked on that. So we're starting basically over from scratch. What else is there? Patreon. If you want to support us in that way, we'd really appreciate it. 1776 United. You can find all our channel shirts there. We have 2 different versions. We'll try and leave a coupon code down below, which will save you some extra coin. I have a swag shop where you can pick up unique patches and stuff you won't find anywhere else at our big cartel shop, and the website 13cgunreviews.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter. Still haven't put out a newsletter yet this year, and it is almost Independence Day. I am sorry, we'll have to get one of those together and out. It's just been insanely busy, so it is what it is. Thanks again, everybody. Take care. Talk soon.